Hello everyone, I'm Carmen, one of the 3D modelers here at Firestorm Studios, and today we'll be starting a new project. I've been working on a lantern for the last too long, 2-3 months I think, and I think it's time we started a project from scratch, and we're going to be doing it a little bit differently from last time. So with my previous project I did a lot of poor planning was one of the problems with it. But beyond the poor planning, it was difficult for anyone to follow along should they have wanted to. So the plan will be as follows. I'll upload a file each week with where we left off the previous week, but organized. And then if you guys want to mess with the file, want to try things, want to see how it was built or anything like that, you'll have the option to. So that will be in the works. Obviously today we're starting new from scratch, so any default Houdini scene will work. It would not be worth uploading an empty scene, but from Friday I'll probably be uploading a scene for you guys to play with, should you want to. So, quick disclaimer. I did not have time to look for a proper concept. And I'm not going to be sticking to one concept either. So in this case, I jumped on Pinterest, and as these things go, Pinterest is currently full of AI models and references and concepts, etc., etc. So quick disclaimer, this is AI, and AI comes with problems in terms of concepts, but I'm just looking for overall vibe. I'm just looking for things I like, things I don't like. As I said, I'm not going to be sticking to one concept. So in this case, it's functional. So, and obviously getting permissions for concept artists, etc., etc., takes time as well. Because obviously, if I send them a message right now, they're not going to be responding before I start the stream. So, that is our disclaimer for today. Now, this is the overall vibe we're going for. Now, usually I plan my projects before I start streaming. In the case of, let's say, I'll have a rough idea of what I want to do, and I already have my project plan in place and everything like that. In today's case, we'll be actually going over the project planning part. So there's a couple things I'm looking for in these concepts. I'm looking for overall style in the buildings. Now this style is a bit different from the rest, but it is still pretty. So I threw that in for a little variety, so to speak. So my first priority is establishing what I want to do. Now, here's where I don't say get complicated, but we've got two different styles at least, right? So that's problem number one. Um, which is fine, but that's going to give us added complication. So I'm going to start by making a list of things I want to include. For example, I definitely want to include a bridge. So bridge is going to be one of my assets. And one of my things that I'll be building. Now in the past, I've made everything in one geonode. We might do the same for this project, but I'll be using subnetworks a lot more than I did with the previous one, just to simplify processes. And we'll have probably individual elements that we can reorder in order to get a different result. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to make still buildings from scratch, right? I want elements I can reuse. So for example, these four floors are basically the same. There's some variation to it, slightly different doors and so on, but it's the same thing, right? So that makes it easier. If you take this one, for example, the left and the right is actually almost identical. I suspect the left might have an extra floor. So I'm sort of starting to build a mental list. Some of it will be written down of elements I like, things I want to include. I definitely want a hexagon type of building. So we played a lot with hexagons with Lantern. So we've pretty much got that down. It'll probably be one of our easier pieces to implement. I do want a hexagon building, so that'll be one of them. I also want a tower. Now, the hexagon building and the tower could fall into one, but I could also potentially combine the hexagon with the square building and make it more longer or do something with it. I don't know. Have fun. So, really, I've installed a different antivirus program, but I have not uninstalled that one. Right, so definitely want bridge. Now we've got two options for bridges. We can decide whether we want to do two bridges in total or whether we just do the one. The simpler one to implement would be this one. But alternatively, we could go for something like this. Or we can do both. I'm going to say let's keep it simple, but have the option for a more complicated one. So I'm actually going to copy and paste this and call it bridge complex. And this is going to be optional. It's a nice to have, so to speak. So what we're going to do is plop that over there, and we're going to make two notes. One is going to be optional, and one is going to be mandatory. So let's do that. Mandatory. Ooh, if I can spell today, that would be very, very helpful. Right, mandatory. Right, so additional things that I want. I definitely, okay, I did say I want a tower. Definitely need a square building of some sort, maybe inspired by this. And then let's see what else. We could possibly look at plants. Have not created plants in a very long time in Houdini. Did do it once. Got an okay result. Cannot remember how I did it. So we'll be playing around and seeing, but that'll be in the final stages. Plants we're going to do as optional. But it does add something. We can maybe look at doing ivy. Maybe we can build a thing so we can draw a curve and ivy gets plopped onto the building. So that, again, that's optional, so we'll see about that. Right. Maybe stairs. Let's say stairs. Now we're working with a bunch of different sizes here, but I'll fix that in a bit. Possibly something like this, like a fence of some sort. And the fence can be reused on in other places as well. So let's do a fence. And then shrink that down. Shrink that down. That gets plopped into there. Goes into there. Okay, good enough. Right, so we've got a bridge. That's one element. The hexagon building is another one. And then square building be another one. That's about, what's that? A tower. 4 elements. Now generally you want 5. Generally you want 5. So maybe we do a small one and a bigger one, and we combine it with something else. Don't know what yet. We'll see as we build it. So that's going to be big. Alright. Fantastic. Planning done. Well, not quite. The planning will just be the baseline. It's just going to be something we keep in mind. Ideally, I would plan this a lot further than I currently am. But we're going to run with it and see what we get. In terms of overall complexity and how easy or how difficult it will be, tower is probably going to be the easiest. So I suspect we are going to start with that one. Then, some things I'm thinking about, what are elements I would want to be able to change on the towers. So I would want to be able to change the roof shape. Now with my lantern, I did not plan it this far ahead. I did not plan in this much detail, and I regretted it. So due to that, I'm going to go through the process of actually planning this one properly. So we want something for roof shape. I want the ability to choose how many levels. So what are we going to call that? Number of stories. Why not? Number of stories, and then I'm going to want to be able to change what else? Overall height and width. So that's going to be height and width. I can actually make this very simple, much simpler. Let's just create one node with all this information. So that's going to be height, width. That way I don't have to worry about the scale. Number of stories. And that's going to be roof shape. Come on, go there. Right. Anything else I want to change? Don't know. Let's look at them and decide. Do you want the number of stories? Do you want the height? I do want the shape of the roof. The height of the roof? It's fine. Possibly. No, I think that's good enough. I think with these values we'll be able to get a couple of different results, and I think that's good enough for now. For some of the others we might go more advanced, but for this one I think that kind of does what it needs to do. Alright, so for the tower we're going to go with the cylinder. Not sure exactly how high resolution we'll go with it, but that's half the fun in any case. So starting it off simple, we start with a geonode. Don't know how many of you have used Houdini before, but if you have questions, let me know. This is going to be more beginner friendly than my lantern has been because my lantern was very advanced by the time I started streaming it, or at least consistently streaming it. So due to that, I'll try to keep this relatively beginner friendly. So let us see. We're going to call this tower. Now, this name might change in the future because, as I mentioned, I'm kind of trying to decide how I want to do this because I can build this in one of two ways. I can build it all in the same network, or I can split it out. Now, in this case, I mean, we're starting with the tower. That's the simple part. So for now, I don't really need to make that choice. But if I start implementing the other elements, then I might have to decide at some point what I want to do and how. So, so. In terms of the tower, what look are we going for? I quite like this one, but it's almost too, I wouldn't say too simple, but too simple. We could look at something like this, which is quite fun. Or we can go for something like that, which has like a little, I think I would like something like that for the top, but optional. Maybe optional. Maybe. We'll see. So maybe something like that. But I think the base will probably be something like more like this. So the base is going to be a cylinder. No. That is not what I want to do. Let's do cylinder. Alright. Okay. So at this point, we now need to decide how many pieces we want going around. Now, the things I'm thinking about when deciding how many I want is how many windows do I want? Do I want the ability to change the amount of windows we'll have? That type of things are crossing my mind. In this case, I think 16 is probably fine. If I do every second one, that'll give me 8 windows around. I think we're going to do that. Because we can also build it in such a way that we can change this at a later time, and then we can actually use this for the base for the hexagon. So let's do that. Right. Keep it at 16. Don't need that many segments. Now, we need potentially 2 things. The base is just straight up. But from there, we have the option to either go narrower or keep it straight. Now, I suspect we'll keep the base relatively wide and then go narrower to the top because that's fun. I don't have another reason for it. It's just fun. So I will be doing that. And then I can also add a roof. Let's do the roof as well. Now this, I'll probably give end caps. Yeah, let's do that. And then I'm going to create another one, but this one is going to be wider at the base and shorter. So it's probably going to be, let's try 0.25. And let's template this one just to see what we're working with. Yeah, I think that's fine. Now, I do not want this to be underneath. I want this to actually be on top. So I'm actually going to use a match size. And the match size will determine the placement. So this will go into the bounding box. We'll be using this as the bounding box, and that will go into the geometry. Right, fantastic. From here, we'll be... This obviously automatically takes it to the center, which is not quite what we want. We want it to be, I believe, at the maximum. No, it's not at the maximum. Actually, let's quickly view this and see what's going on. It is flat on the ground. So why are you not? None. That is completely on top. Why are you not on top? min text it there. Maximum. There we go. Got it. It's working. It's functional. Now obviously we want both of these. So, we also want it probably scale to fit. Do we want it to scale to fit? No, we do not. Because the problem with scale to fit is it's going to shrink it down. And we actually want this to be wider, and you can't. In the height, you can adjust the offset and have it like slightly inwards or whatever. But you can't do the same for scaling. It's going to follow the size of the bounding box. So that's not quite what we want. So moving on from that, we're going to do a merge. If it doesn't freeze, merge, and this merge is going to get plopped. Oh well, we got the other merge. So this is the bounding box one, and that is the other one, and if we merge this together, we get that, which is quite ugly, but it's a start. I think this height would probably have to be closer to 2. No, too high in my opinion. Let's do 1.5. Better. Right, that is a start. From here, the next thing I want to implement is something to add levels to it. So, what we're going to be doing is a copy and transform. Copy and transform. And that goes plopped into there. And then we'll be determining the number of copies by what? Because the reason I say by what is the way we've currently got things set up, the top piece, the roof, so to speak, adds extra geometry, which is fine, but it adds extra height. So the problem with the extra height is now if I copy and transform, I can no longer use the scale of the original cylinder because this is adding an extra, how much? 0.25 to the overall height. And maybe I don't want this to always be 0.25. So it is a bit of a situation we're dealing with. So what we can do instead is we can actually change this to max. And then this will align with the top of the cylinder's height, I suspect. Yep, it aligns perfectly. Fantastic. Alright, so now what we can do is we can grab this cylinder, we can copy that height, and that can get pasted into this in the translate, translate. So here's relative reference, and now we've got a functional thing. Hi CG, hi. For 3D modeling work, should I use a mouse or graphics tablet? Which one is easier to get used to and will make my work easier? Good question. Now, as these things go, it depends. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to do character work, you're going to use ZBrush or Blender, depending, for sculpting. So in that case, graphics tablet is pretty mandatory. If you're more interested in hard surface modeling, you'll be using a mouse for 99% of what you do. Now, to further expand on that, your graphics tablet is better for organic things. I'm talking about rocks, characters, cloth, filigree, plants, anything like that is relatively organic. It doesn't have any hard edges to it. That is much better to be doing with a graphics tablet. In terms of hard surface, that'll be typically your more like this, buildings, sci-fi environments, in some cases weapons, stuff like that, you know, hard surface things. So tables, chairs, etc. Now there's overlap. There is overlap, but generally speaking, that is how you would split it out. So, in conclusion, my advice would be to do both, most likely, because quite honestly, even if I'm working in hard surface, I do sometimes utilize sculpting tools. So it's a valuable skill to have both. But the one you do first will be determined by the area you're interested in. So are you interested in characters, environments? What are you, props? There's lots of options, but what are you interested in learning? That'll give us a better baseline. Right, so this is functional. We've got the start of a tower. We've got levels to it. We could scale it. We can add a scale of maybe 0.98 and 0.98. Possibly make that just a 9. It'll give us a more interesting effect. But I actually think that's scaling too much. So let's try 9.5. We could also implement a thing that this is determined at the end, where you have a control that can determine whether the scale gets affected or not. Alright, so that is that. And then we could potentially add a random thing for height. That could be fun. Can I remember how to do it? No, I cannot. So we'll put a pause on that and I'll think a bit about how to implement that. But you could potentially do something like each copy is slightly shorter. But the problem with that is it's currently scaling in the center, so eventually there's no overlap, so that's maybe not ideal. Right, so let's keep it that way for now. Now what I would also potentially do is add a rotation to it, that let's say some have doors facing this way, some will have it that way, and so on and so forth, so that could be fun. Choices. Right, let's add a boolean. Don't like booleans, quick question. Is that a Blender or Maya? Which software is it? It is Houdini. Now, Houdini is not typically used for modeling, but you can model in it, and it's really, really fun to model in it. I would say it's the most closest to Blender's geometry nodes. So you can do similar in it. I would say Blender's geometry nodes was probably inspired by Houdini's node network. I don't think it's quite as advanced, but you can still do a lot of things in it. I just have a preference for Houdini because that's the way I learned procedural modeling. So yeah, bottom line is procedural modeling is fun. It's especially fun in Houdini. Right, so now this is a technique that I use a lot. I've used it in probably every project I've demoed, and that is creating a curve from a line. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because I have a lot, but if you guys want me to elaborate on it, let me know and then I can do that. But basically you start with a line, and then you look at that, right? So we can actually see the line. Now by default a line comes with 2 points, 2 vertices, so we need more than that. But not only that, it does not have a normal direction, and we're going to be using a normal direction to determine the direction the curve will be shaping. So for that we'll be using, let's do the normal first. So that's going to be attribute create. So do that, that gets plugged into there, and it does nothing because we've not specified what it should do. So this is a pointer class, so that's fine. Now vectors and, well, not vectors. Points and vertices are relatively the same, not quite, but they're very similar. I can't go into too much detail about the differences because quite honestly in my mind they're pretty much the same. Which is probably not a good thing. I should probably branch out from that. Have not. But yeah, bottom line is that's what we're calling it. So that's why its UI is looking like an old software. Yes, but not only that, Fun fact, Blender is probably older than Houdini, or about the same age. I just think Blender's UI was probably more recent. Got that info from Pat. Pat watches my streams, so thank you for that little tidbit, Pat. I'm using that info a lot. So the name for the attribute is N because it is normal, and then the default direction is going to be any direction we want, but in this case I'm going with that direction. As you can see, nothing happens, but if we actually view the normals, we can see we actually have a normal direction. Right, so brilliant, we've got normals. The next thing we need is firstly more vertices or points, but secondly we need curve U. Now curve U is something I like to describe as a mask, and in this case we will be using it as that. So if you go into your resample node, you'll see curve U attribute. So click that to turn it on, and if you want to view it, let's see, where is it? View that, brilliant, curve view. See, we've got a gradient. So the gradient is what we're going to be using as a mask. Now we'll be using it in grayscale. So it's very similar to how you would use a mask in any other software, such as Painter and anything like that. So there's that. And it also, by default, added a certain number of points. Now this might be enough, it might not be, but if we need more points, we could always add them later. That's the brilliance of Houdini and procedural modeling. You could always change stuff. I can always go back and say, I want a different height line, and so on and so forth. Right, so now that we've got normals, we've got curve view, we can do an attribute. I think it's attribute VOP. Yep, it's attribute VOP. So we can plot that down. Now attribute VOP is a bit like a network inside of a network. So if we pop into there, we've got a few different things. We've got points, we've got normals, we've got colors, and so on and so forth. In this case, we'll be using the point and the normal. Also, curve U. So to get the curve U, we need to do a bind. Now a bind is a bit like an import, so we'll be utilizing it like that. Here we go. I have another question. I can't decide which field I want to specialize in. Always like VFX and effects work. From my research, Houdini seems to be the best software for this, but at the same time I really want to do character modeling, and I also want to design sci-fi worlds. I need even the smallest piece of advice right now on my way to becoming a skilled modeling in Blender, and I guess I need to choose a specialization. Right, so specialization is probably the area I myself really struggle to decide upon, because I also enjoy a lot of different elements. I enjoy characters, I enjoy procedural modeling, I enjoy texturing, I enjoy realism, but I don't mind exploring stylize every now and then. So I was in a similar situation. Now in my case, my specialization was somewhat chosen for me due to just the type of work I was able to get. Right? Because the industry is in a bit of a tough time right now. So, bottom line is, Houdini is probably, from what I've heard, and I've heard this from multiple people, one of the best softwares to learn and to know. Because I don't know if there's necessarily a shortage in people that know it, but this is such a specialized field that it's a really, really valuable skill to have. So, in conclusion, doesn't even have to be VFX, but learning Houdini as a whole is really good. And if it's something you enjoy doing, then I highly encourage you to learn it. In terms of characters, I believe you said characters as well. Yep. Character modeling. By all means do that as well. And I know you need to choose specialization at some point. Between the two, I think Houdini will probably give you more options. And you can do, fun fact, you can do sci-fi environments in Houdini. So if you're good at Houdini and you understand the special effects side, you'll have an easier time learning the modeling side, which is brilliant. In terms of character work, the downside to characters is everyone wants to do characters. In fact, when I started learning, everyone said, do not do characters because everyone does characters and there's no work in it. Now, I had the opposite experience. I've mainly been working on character type of work. But generally speaking, that has been what I was told. Um, Now I am a freelancer, so that makes it a bit different. I think in a studio setting, you would have a tougher time finding work as a character artist than anything else. So, yes. Now, something else to keep in mind, characters and Houdini is very far apart. Houdini is very technical. I mean, talking very, very technical. Not that characters aren't, but characters are almost more creative, in my opinion and my experience. And again, all of this is based upon my opinions and experiences, so you might have a different opinion or experience. So, the key here is figuring out what makes you tick. Do you enjoy the problem solving? Do you enjoy the nitty-gritty of trying to figure out the code and playing with the nodes, figuring out which node you need, changing your networks, optimizing your networks, that type of thing? If that makes you tick, specialize Houdini. But if you enjoy the creative, 1000% characters. Not that Houdini isn't creative, the problem solving in Houdini is creative. But if that's not the thing that makes you enjoy 3D or digital art as a whole, then Houdini is probably not the best choice. So yeah, as a starting point, figure out what area of each speciality you enjoy the most, and then compare it. For example, I enjoy Houdini far more than I enjoy characters. Characters is where I have work, but I enjoy Houdini more. Right, so we've got the curve view, and then we need the. What do we need? We need a ramp. No, a ramp. So that's going to be a ramp parameter, and I'm going to change this to probably float. And then I'm going to need, what do you call it? Displace along curve, no, along normal, not along curve. Displace along normal, and then point goes into points. Normals go into normal. Curve U goes into the ramp. So that goes into there, then curve U, or not curve U, then ramp goes into a mount. Now I search Houdini license and I'm not joking, thank you for any time. Houdini has an apprentice version which is free, so if it's non-commercial work you can use the Houdini apprentice. There's some limitations, especially on regular resolution, but for the rest, I mean, it's functional. It's what I use the majority of the time since I don't use Houdini for professional work. So that is something to keep in mind. Okay, so displays P goes into points, and that is that, I think. I think that is all. To view that, that goes there, and then what have I missed? What have I missed? Point does go into point. Normal does go into normal. Curve view, curve view. It is a vector, well, it's a float. It is linear. Why are you not working? I wonder if we lost our height somewhere. No, so that's functional. This is functional. That is functional. That is not functional. Why are you not functional? It's almost like it's going in the wrong direction. Check our normals. That is that. That is a point. Put that in float. No. I bought a course to learn Houdini. And in the very first video, the teacher asked that I think again why you want to do this, why you want to learn it. Are you sure you want to make your life harder? And so I left it. What? No. Okay, wait. I'll come back to that because I see I got a question before that. Do you prefer Vox over Vex? I do prefer Vox over Vex. I bought a course to learn Houdini and in the very first video. Okay. Got it. So, Houdini is hard. I won't lie. For example, I've used this same settings, same everything, a billion times. I'm not quite sure why it's not working today. But, be that as it may, it's still worth learning. It's like any software. I really struggled learning ZBrush. I'm not a natural sculptor. Can sculpt. Do I enjoy sculpting? No, I do not enjoy sculpting. But even if it's hard, that doesn't mean it's not worth learning. So point is, yes, but you need to be sure about learning anything. You need to be sure you want to learn 3D before you go into 3D. Never mind what you specialize in. You need to be sure that's the direction you enjoy. You need to be sure you enjoy it. So yeah, sure, that's an element of it. But with Houdini, you don't need to be any more sure than you need to be for any other software. And you can do it for fun. You don't have to specialize in it if you don't want to. If you don't enjoy it, by all means, leave it. But you can sometimes just learn things because you enjoy it. It doesn't have to be this high pressure, do it or die type of situation, right? You can do it because you just enjoy it. And maybe one day it does turn into a job for you, but maybe it doesn't. Doesn't matter. You can just do it because you like it. It doesn't have to be this, how do I put it, severe, serious decision. So don't overanalyze it. Do it because you enjoy it. Do it because you like it. And if you don't like it, by all means, do something else. But Houdini doesn't make your life harder. I've had situations where Houdini has made my life easier. So, yeah, well, I have a different opinion from that, and everyone is entitled to their own opinions. But bottom line is, I don't overthink it. Right, so why is this not working? I still don't know why this is not working. I wonder if I use the wrong node. This space. Normal. That is the right one though. Why is this scale? Got that. Point definitely goes into point. Alright. Point definitely goes into point. Ramp definitely goes into amount. Normal definitely goes into normal. Displace long P goes into P. Right. Right. So why are you still not functional? Wait, I changed something on the bind, so that's not. It is a float. That is also a float. It's the vector. I don't think it's a vector though. It's not a vector, it is a float. Now why doesn't it work though? Do you have a line? Do you have a normal? What is the name of Houdini's render system and which rendering system is best for Blender? So Houdini has two. I believe Redshift is one and the other one is Solaris. Solaris is newer. I prefer Solaris. It's a bit quicker. In terms of Blender, I cannot tell you. I do not use Blender, unfortunately. I've used it in the past, but I predominantly render in Maya, which is Arnold, so unfortunately not the best person to ask. But if you hop on the Firestorm Discord, there are people that use Blender, so they'll be able to answer that question for you. So there's that. Curve view is curve view. Still don't know why this doesn't work. It's going to be simple, something really simple. Curve here goes into ramp, ramp goes into there. Needs to be a spine, a spline. I am going insane. What am I missing? Let's quickly open up another file. So I'm not sure why this is not working. Because I do have the curve view. Got the normals. And I've done this a billion times in this exact method. And it always works. So why is it not working this time? Let's try that one. So Houdini is a bit complicated in the sense of you have a different viewport for rendering, but it's not difficult to use. It's just a longer process than some of the other softwares. It's a little bit more complex. Not difficult, just a bit more complex, maybe some extra stress. I will say though, I much prefer Houdini's lighting system to Maya's lighting system. So there is that. I'm really curious what I'm missing here, because I've got the normal. That needs to be vector. Got it. Needs to be vector. That was set to float. Right, so fantastic. This is working. I actually want to flip it the other way. Up here. So. Got that working, and we're going to be using Bezier. Now that's the case with Houdini. If something is not working, it's 9 times out of 10 user error, which is horrible to say, but it really is. I want this one to be at 0.5. 0.5. There we go. Alright, so I've got another file opening up. I'll close it in a bit. So, in terms of shape, let's go to front view. No, that's right view. Front view. Brilliant. Don't like that that's going above this line. So that I'm also going to place it 0.5. Ideally, I want this to be straight there. That is better. That is quite a large window though. Let's change it to 0.4. Around about there. Now the brilliant thing about Houdini is if I later decide I want a different thing here, I can do it. But for now, let's just get a baseline in. So, closing down my extra file. I've heard that Houdini needs a powerful GPU, if that's the reason why only big studios Houdini. Fun fact, not only big studios use Houdini. A lot of people use Houdini. Both in the studio setting, even for freelancing. So it's not unique to big studios. In terms of processing, it depends on the size of the scene and what you're rendering. Obviously, the better your PC is, the better your GPU is, the better your RAM is, the better your everything is, processor and so on and so forth, the easier time you'll have. Now, I have a decent PC, but it's still in the mid-range gaming laptop range, so to speak. Don't know my exact specs. I've got 16GB RAM. I believe I've got a 3050 Ti graphics card, which is, again, it's a decent graphics card for most things. I am looking at upgrading, but not for Houdini, for Substance Painter. Substance Painter requires far more from my PC than Houdini does. Granted, I haven't delved too deep into VFX. I've done mostly the modeling side, but for the modeling side, my computer has been doing more than it needs to do. Keeping in mind that I've also been rendering in here, done lighting, and I've done streaming, not well rendering of course, but I've done streaming well, modeling at Houdini, and I have been fine, even with bigger scenes. So, that isn't a factor. And then basically you can just test it. Just test what your PC can handle with Houdini and decide whether you're within spec or not. It's going to be a bit of a trial and error situation. So, we're going to be mirroring this across. Potentially also doing a resample. Right, now, the thing with a mirror, and I know it has a consolidate seam, which in theory merges the vertices in the center. I, however, have found that no matter how high I put this value, I still have two vertices on top of each other. Which actually I think you can maybe, if we do that, we can fix that. I found a fix. I'm happy. Okay, so that's going to be 0. That goes all the way up to 10. That jumps to 20. Right, so the next problem I'm having is my point numbers aren't in order. Every point has a number. This is with all 3D software. Houdini just gives you the ability to access that number. Or at least in an easier, more condensed way. So this goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. to 10, and then it jumps to 20. I want the point numbers to be in order. So what I'm probably going to do, I wonder if we can do it with a join node. Possibly. Yes. Right, so the join node has now made my point numbers in order, so that goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. to all the way to 20, which is brilliant. I do want to do a resample though, because I don't think I have enough points. So let's do that, and that just makes it cleaner and smoother. Brilliant. Something I don't like, this is dipping in. Don't like it dipping in, so we're quickly going to fix that. Right about there. Don't want to add an extra point. Brilliant. Next problem. I want to sweep this, but the problem with sweeping this at this stage is my normals are going that way. I need the normals to face the direction of the curve. Reason being, I can actually demonstrate this if I add a sweep and plug that into there and say square, I get that. Don't want that. Now this is caused by one of two reasons. Firstly, I think this would maybe fix it. No. Let's quickly remove. Okay, we'll leave it at that. But yeah, your bottom line is you see how it kind of flattens out here. Don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an orient long curve. My friend uses Houdini for FX, and I'm still fighting with Maya render like it's a final boss battle. In my experience, even modeling things, in terms of even models, rendering models, is quicker in Houdini. It's quicker than Old. If you use Solaris, I can guarantee it's 9 times out of 10 quicker than Arnold, and prettier too. And the lighting is easier and quicker to set up. Yes, it's more complicated to set up, but it is quicker to set up. Because you can literally click on your model and say, I want the highlight of this model to be here. And it rotates and places the light accordingly. Which is really, really useful. So bear that in mind. Right, we've got this fixed. So basically what this does, if we quickly view that, see how the normal directions are floating along the curve and kind of following the line of it? Before, it was like that. And that's why the sweep didn't work. So if we tell the sweep it needs to follow the, or tell the normals they need to follow the direction of the curve, then we've got magic. So in some cases we'll want this to be swept. In other cases we will not want it to be swept. So in some cases, we might want the join to do that. And then we would, I believe, change the tolerance. Yep, change the tolerance, and that'll flatten that out. If we resample it, we get this, which is not quite ideal. Let's see. If we do that, that evens that out. This would be used as a boolean, right? So what I think I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating two networks. This one, now there's a way of doing this. What was the key for it? Let's quickly Google, because there's a way of grabbing all your nodes and plopping them into a subnetwork. Let's see. Let us see. Shift C. It is Shift C. Now it looks like they disappeared. They have not. They just plopped into here. And we can give it a pretty name and so on and so forth. There's also a way to have these even. There's a key spacing these evenly. I cannot recall the key's name, so we'll be just manually organizing things. The attribute VOP is possibly something we might want to change at some point and have a control in place so we can manipulate it from afar, so to speak. But for now, let's leave it like that. This is going to be arch boolean, right? I'm going to duplicate this, and this is just going to be arch sweep. Alright, brilliant. Now, for arch boolean, what we'll probably be doing is creating extrude. So, that's going to be a poly extrude. Poly extrude. And that goes, let's put that in perspective. And yeah, why not? It can go that direction. What we probably want to do is we do want that. That basically just adds a face in the back. And I'm going to get rid of the point numbers and all of that so we can have a cleaner look. Now, the downside to this is I actually want this to be in the center of the world. I probably want it to extrude both ways. Should be a way to do that. Group. I wonder if you can extrude both directions. What we can probably do, because I do want it to extrude both directions, is we can output a group for the back. I believe it's the back group. And then we can do another poly extrude. Do a poly extrude. And this one we're going to specify we want the extrude back, and then we can add the distance. And that is, let's make it a clean number and do 0.3. And that'll also be 0.3. Brilliant. So this will be used as a boolean. If I did the correct one, I did. Right, brilliant. Now the sweep we're going to change because we've got the join set to connect and we don't want that. This is usually at 0.5, that is at 1. And then we don't want to wrap it. There we go. Orient fine, output fine, all good. Do we have a resample though? What is the point numbers on this? For the resample, we probably want do we want subdivision? I don't want the straight edges though, because that doesn't clean it up enough. I think in this case, we'll probably resample before we do the before we do the mirror. Do the mirror and then we can reduce that amount. Brilliant. That works. Join. Brilliant. Brilliant. Functional. Right. So we've got our archway. Now, here comes the complicated part. We need to cut it out of this, which is fine. That's just a boolean. But we probably don't want it to just be on the one side. Now the easiest would be just having it go straight through. Don't want to do that, so that's not an option. And not only that, I probably want multiple doors. So that makes it more complicated as well, because we're dealing with a circular object here. What I probably will do, trying to think what the best option would be. Firstly, I'm going to move this copy and transform down. That's going to be the first thing. The next is I'm going to template the boolean. Now currently we cannot see the boolean. It's fine. Maybe we should do the reverse. Let's template the thing and we can do view that. Now, my current problem with this is as follows. Actually, I've got multiple problems with this, but we'll get to it. Is obviously it's in the center, so it's not going to cut through this. That's problem number one. Problem number two is, in my opinion, this is too wide. So, what we're going to fix probably first is we're going to add a transform. Now, technically, I could do this within the subnetwork, but I don't want to do that because maybe somewhere else I want the wider one. So I'll add a transform at this stage so I can alter it specifically for this tower. So that gets transformed, and then for scale, this is going to be in the X direction. I probably want 0.5, 7.5. I hate these random values. Let's try 7. That's probably fine. Right, so that is the one thing I'm going to do. The next thing I need to do is probably translate it. Let's do that. And I think I'm going to use a match size. The reason I want to use a match size rather than manually adjusting the translate is because if I manually adjust the translate, that means if I ever change the scale of my tower, my boolean will no longer be functional. So if I can wait till this unfreezes and hopefully it doesn't crash. Don't know why it froze, but it did. So we're going to give that a second. Or more than a second. Yeah, man. Don't die. Don't know why it froze on me. That's functional. That is not. Everything is brilliantly locked. Let's try. Can I close it? And still save? Because I've got a little problem. I've not saved this. Right, so I can close the scene. I cannot click in the scene. Oh, okay, let's save and quit then. Let's do. This isn't technically how to put it. This isn't technically the correct place, but what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to save it into the Lanterns project, just because I do not have a folder structure set up for this yet. So giving that a second to load. Still not sure why it froze, mind you, but we'll work with it. I think it might have unfreezed. It did not. Right, okay. Let's save and quit. And go there. Come on. It's gonna test my patience today. Definitely going to test my patience. Come on. In the meantime, I'm going to open another folder just in case I need to rebuild this. If I need to rebuild this, we'll be doing a speed run, like a really quick speed run. Because at the end of the day, it's just a cylinder and copy and transform and a curve. It's not that complex. We should be able to rebuild it in like 10 minutes if I don't talk too much. Right. Well, that is deciding whether it wants to live or die. Let's open a new network. Brilliant. Right, so speedrunning this. That's going to be geometry. Because I made the mistake, we are going to create a new project. Alright. New project is going to be called environment. Why not? And then we are going to decide where to save it to. Giving it a second to load. That's going to be over there. And we are going to go to Firestorm. Streaming. Environment. Brilliant. Accept. And then we are going to save project to environment. Accept. And then we're going to save as. And this is going to be very descriptive. Environment. Brilliant. So that's going to be environment. Then I'm quickly going to check whether the other one decided to live. It did not. Right. Brilliant. Going to geo. We are starting with cylinder again. And then that is going to be 16, but I don't want the amount of segments. This was 1.5. Right. Going to duplicate that in caps. This one is going to be 0.25. Brilliant. We are going to change the outer radius, inner radius, sorry, to 1.2. Then we are going to add a copy and transform. And also a map size. Map size. Size is going to be determined by this one. This one is the geometry. So that goes into there. That goes into there. That's going to be specifically translated. That goes to max. And that's going to be set to min. Maybe. Also max. Yeah, let's do that. And then we need a merge. Right, that goes into there. Not into the copy. Into there. And then this one goes into there. That merges together. Got that. Brilliant. Copy and transform. Transform is good. Well, yeah, the height is going to be determined by the height of the cylinder, so I'm going to copy that parameter and paste it into there. Alright, brilliant. Then for scaling, I want to scale by 0.95. And that's also going to be 95. Brilliant. Functional. First thing done. Next thing is going to be the curve, so that's going to be a line. Line goes there, then we need normals, that's going to be attribute create. Attribute create, that goes into there, then that's going to be called n. Then that's going to be a vector, not a float. 1. There's going to be the value. Then we need curve view, that's going to be a resample. Brilliant. Resample goes into there, that goes into there. When we need curve view, then we need attribute bob. Attribute bob goes into there, that goes into there, view it, we need a bind, so it's going to be bind, and that's going to be curve view. Ooh, that's not spelled correctly. There we go. Output. Then we need a RAM, and we need what else do we need? Displace long. So this, I'm going to quickly pull down, so it goes there, that goes there, curve view goes into input, and then that can be applied, that's fine, and then displace one. Normal point goes into point, normal goes into normal, and ramp goes into amount, and that all goes into point. Brilliant. We're halfway there. So that goes flipped. No, but I don't want this type of ramp. Let's go back. Ramp needs to be flipped. Brilliant. And then this needs to be fixed. Right, that gets changed to Bezier. I liked it. Let's do a 0.25. Small archway. And then this goes that way. I don't know what's going on with the music, by the way. It's a random playlist. So I actually think we're probably going to do 0.3. Not for that, for this one. I'm going to skip the song. Where is it? Brilliant. Okay, so that goes into there. And then we can mirror it. First resample. So what I get for type of multiple things at once, let's get rid of that. And do a resample. Brilliant. That goes into there. And we want subdivision. That should be good. And then we can do the mirror. Mirror gets plopped into there. That goes into there. Got that working. We do want to consolidate, but we don't want it to completely merge. Then we want to do join. So join. And then I want to see what's going on with point numbers. So that goes fine. Right, good. Brilliant. Now this can then get switched. So what we're going to do is this is going to get plopped into a subnet. So that's Shift C, and we're going to call this one curve. Well, arch sweep. Then we're going to duplicate this one, and that one is going to be Boolean. My other file still hasn't decided to unfreeze. Actually, might have. It did unfreeze. Okay, so while we're at it, I'm also going to set project for this one. Still not sure why it froze, but it probably froze again actually, but anyway. And that's good. Where is it? Firestorm streaming environment. Brilliant. Accept. Then we are going to save as environment 001. Brilliant. Right, so the sweep should actually be a Boolean, so we're going to pull that. Which one actually? That one is sweep. I lie, I don't think it actually. I'm very confused. Which is which? Oh, that one is that one. Still frozen. Okay, thinking. What did I want to do? That one's going to be Boolean. And then that goes into there. For the join, we are going to change this all to 0, 0. Wrap first to last. And then we're going to do a pull extrude. Sorry guys, going very quickly, but I want to get back to where I was so we can make some actual progress here. Right, so that's going to be distance of 0.25. Why not? And then I believe it was 3 last time, but I don't think we actually need that much. Going to do that. Get the back group. Poly extrude. Go goes into there. And then this one is going to be specified extrude back, so we can extrude that way, and that's also going to be 0.25. Don't need any groups of that. That is all good. Brilliant. Arch Boolean, arch sweep, got both. I don't think I've got an orient. Need an orient. Orient along curve. Not so much for the Boolean, I think. Possibly not for the Boolean. But for the actual archway, yes. Right, so what we were doing is we were trying to get a Boolean to be functional. So, first thing we wanted to do is template the tower. Then we want to create a transform. No, we don't need a transform because I've made this one narrow. We need a Boolean. Going into unknown territory, yeah. So that's going to be Boolean subtract. That's going to be the first geometry. That's going to be second geometry. And we need a match size. Match size. That goes into there. This goes there. That goes there. Now I don't want it to... I want it to go in the Z direction. So let's do none. None. Don't want it to be... Yeah, I think that should work. Probably want it to be a little bit offset. Teeny bit. Too much. 0.5. There's one, yeah? 0.05 probably. Just a little bit, because I don't want it to completely flat to the floor. Probably. Right, so that gets plugged into geometry B. And gets booleaned in. My tablet is dying on me. Probably not visible on stream, but it, I lost all videos. Don't know why, so I'm not doing anything complicated. Right, brilliant. That is somewhat functional. If I can see my screen again, that would be helpful. It would be very helpful. Okay, so, thinking. I don't want to unplug it, but I might have to unplug it and replug it in. But I'm using my tablet as a monitor, so that's going to be problematic. That should be solid and solid. Right, in this case, I think I'm going to have to unplug my tablet. So quickly going to do a be right back, and I'll be back in like 30 seconds. 30 seconds is up. I'm back. Right. That was what I get for having cats and a cable that might or might not have been chewed on. Right, so we've got that working. Now potentially we only want a door and then we want a bunch of windows going around. Now the windows are going to be similar. They are going to be similar, but maybe want them to be narrower. And maybe we want them to go around in a circle. The problem with going around in a circle though, and this is one of those areas where scale will become relevant, and translation, because I want the Boolean to still work even if I decide I want a wider base to this tower. So, trying to think. We can do that in one of two ways. We can also use a match size. But the problem is, let's try it. For the sake of the argument, I'm actually going to use this one. So we're going to do copy and transform. And if it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, well, tough. So that gets copied. Then we're going to take this. Trying to think. I believe you divide the rotation. There's a specific formula for this. No, it's not that. Take the number of copies. Copy that parameter, paste that into relative references, and 360 divide by number of copies. Right, so that goes in that direction. Not quite what we want. So let's copy that. Plop it into this maybe. Counteract that, delete channels for that. Zero that out. Alright. Now this might actually work. This might actually work, which would be brilliant. Let's test it if I plop that into there. Don't want to template, actually want to view it. It does work. It works. It's all pretty, and now we can randomly choose the number of. Okay. Well, that's brilliant. And we can go up to 9, maybe. The only problem is that then it starts clipping. But that actually gives a cool effect as well. Okay, brilliant. That works. Sometimes Houdini proves me wrong. This is one of those cases. So, as I mentioned, but the only problem with this is if I combine the window with the door, there's going to be an overlap. So, what would happen if I change this value to something like 300? Would it then stop copying around? No, now I have 300. Would it only go up to a certain point? Pretty much. Pretty much. Only problem, does the spacing stay even though? Now that's the problem, the spacing doesn't stay even. Right. That is annoying. Right. If I do 360 and we keep it to a relatively low value, we'd technically be fine. It's only if we go up at tier jumps, depending on how many you have. Which is not quite ideal. Alternatives. What can be the alternative? And also I want to implement a way where only some of them have windows and some of them just have walls. Don't know how to do that yet, but we'll figure it out. So. Let's first boolean the wall. Let's boolean the wall, and then we can worry about the don't want that thing. We can worry about the windows in a moment. So that goes into there, that one goes into there. But we actually want this to be smaller though, so we are going to use the same match size, but we're actually going to implement a transform before it. So that's going to be transform, and that gets plopped into there, and that's going to be scale X direction, I believe, to 0.75. I think. Alright. Brilliant. That gets copied into there. Now, that gets boolean together. And that sort of lines up. sort of. Now technically there's an overlap in this area, but that's actually fine. I don't mind that too much. So, but the other thing I don't like is it's the same height as the what? As the door. So let's actually reduce the height a little bit. So that's to 0.8. And then for translation, we probably want them a bit higher, don't we? Let's try that. That's doing a whole lot of nothing. Why is it doing a whole lot of nothing? That's the match size. It's the match size. We have a height thing in here. So technically, rather than using the transform, we can just use the match size. Let's do that. And then we can offset it by, I don't know, that much. The only problem now is we get that. Also, that's too high. So let's try 2.5. No? 2? Let's try 2. 0.2. And then see what we can do. Rotating won't help us. Oh, will it? Might help us. But I don't think we want to do that. So we're not going to rotate it. We could try the 300. But then we rotate the door. I don't really like using this many transforms, but let's do that. Transform, and then the number of windows won't be editable, really. But let's rotate this, and that's going to be in this direction. Let's try minus 45. Minus 50. No, not 450. Right. That is functional. I might want a taller door. Don't like how this is looking. Or less windows. Just 6 windows. And then the problem is that this is where the problem comes finicky. If I rotate this, the door is no longer centered. So, work around for that. Instead of rotating the door, the problem is if I rotate the other ones, we're just going to land with the same problem. It's not going to be centered in the door. Trying to think of alternatives here. Let's get it functional, then we can worry about making it better. So this is technically functional at the value of, I think, what was it, 9? I think it was 9. Right. Don't like it at 9 though, because then it clips through. So 8. Okay. So, looking at our references here, I personally think we've got too many windows. Possibly. And I don't like how the windows are looking in comparison to the door. So what are we going to change? I think if we change the door height to be the same height as the windows, the top end of the windows, that might fix the part I don't like. So let's actually implement a transform here. Now in a second I'll be organizing this network because we've got a little bit of a cluttered mess because I was working on too many areas. But we'll do that in a second. Transform that. And then that goes into there. And I actually want to view this one. And we can adjust the scale. So that's probably going to be 1.5. Brilliant. That is better. Yeah, I think I like that more. And then in terms of this transform, I'm actually going to make this window more narrow. Significantly more narrow. Just so you can actually see, one is a window, one is a doorway. Right. Now, what we can potentially do, is if we copy and transform this, we could add a rotation to it. And do something like rotate by 25. Does that actually do something though? That is a whole lot of nothing. Because I technically want this to rotate a little bit between each one. Hey, what are you rotating there? That one goes into there. I'm rotating the wrong thing, that's the problem. I'm rotating the wrong thing. Okay, so if we rotate it here, get some different effects. I wonder if we can do a random. I wonder if we can do a random. We probably need a color ID for that though. I don't think it. Can we just jipper the system and just do add rand? No. Let's delete channels on that. What we can probably do. Trying to remember how to do this. But basically, you assign a random color, and that'll determine that a random thing will get affected. Describing that very badly. But I think that's something I'll have to explore at some point rather than on live stream. So, we are going to use a rotation of 40. Why not? Or do we just keep it? We could just keep it. Let's keep it for now. I'll worry about that later. The next problem I have is technically speaking, we're copying and transforming the same thing over the top. What I would like to do is have like 2 to 3 different variations of this and have that copy up at different, slightly different shapes, slightly different scales, and have it more, I don't know, interesting. I wonder if there's a different way we could do this. But also allow us to have a different total number. Let's think about it at a later stage. For now, let's do the roof. So the roof is going to be the same as the arch sweep. But instead of mirroring this, we will not be mirroring this, and we'll be doing a revolve. So that's going to be revolve. Alright, revolve goes into there. I actually want this to be flipped though. Wait, you're facing the wrong direction. Let's see if I do a minus 360. Will that fix it? No. No, it will not. Right. Let's just flip the normals. Let's just reverse it. That's going to be the quickest. Reverse that. Plop that into there. Plop that into there. And then we've got a very ugly roof. So, to fix that, we are going to go to... Where is it? Attribute file. And I'm going to take this. Plop that into there. And I want some interesting shape. Don't want that to be quite so plain. Let's do... No. Don't think I want that one there. Maybe. Trying to decide what I like. Maybe something like that. Alright. I actually want this to be a little wider at the base there. So what if we do that? Disconnect this part to give us that. And then yeah, that could work. So this is going to be a roof. And let's quickly template this. We'll technically be using a match size. Alright, so that's going to be match size. And we're going to be using the match size to determine the location. So that goes into there. This I'm going to plop down here. That goes into there. There we go. And we don't want it to be the center. We want it to be maximum and minimum. One of those. There we go. The height of this is not ideal, so we'll probably increase the height by a lot. And now we've got a very funny arch, so let's fix that. Something like that. Why not? We might change it. We might change it. No, we don't want to be at object level. We want to be here. Right. Don't like that at all. Don't like that. Okay. Let's keep it simple for a moment. Let's just see what we've got simple wise. We can go that way, there. If we do something like that. That's not really simple, is it? But I mean, it's interesting. Just don't like the shape so much. Let's try that. Or let us try that. And then we do a merge. That gets plopped into there. That gets plopped into there. This gets plopped into there. Brilliant. Now something I do not like is that does not line up, which is not ideal. We do want that to line up. So if we do that, jump into there, and we do... Can we do end caps on this? We can. But I don't technically want the roof to be wider though. So we can do one of two things. We can implement a manual scale, which is not quite what I want. But the problem is, let's take that down. That technically fits, right? At 2, that also fits. No, it doesn't. So because this tower is scaling as it's going up, it's going to give me problems with the scale of the roof. So, what are we going to do? I think in this case, I'm probably going to... Oh, well, that's not what I want to do at all. I'm probably... I don't want it to be manual though. Don't want to be manual. But manual is probably going to be the way to go. Do scale to fit, that's just going to base fit. Area. Volume. Perimeter. No. Base fit. Okay. We'll ignore the scaling for now. Scale to fit off. Right. Well, technically we have got a tower, so that is a start. Got a tower. Not happy with the roof. But if we remove some of this from some of the number of points, we technically have something. We technically have something. What we could do as an alternative. What we could do as an alternative is have different segments like this and copy it on top of each other using a match size. Then it'll copy to the top, and then we could add like a scaling or something. So that would be an alternative. And then you can copy it up and be well and good on your way. But that'll be a lot of networks within networks within networks, so that's a downside. What if we use a copy to points instead and get the center point? That could be an option. But yeah, no. No. Good idea, but it's not going to work. Not very well, at least. Alright. What are we going to do? Upside, let me put it this way, the upside of doing that is you can adjust every segment, but then how do you determine the number of copies? I'll be having to do some research for this, because ideally, what I would ideally want is I would want a random color assigned to every type and then have that copied randomly by color or number or something like that. I'll do some thinking. Randomness is always somewhat problematic to implement, especially because I do know some coding, but so limited that for this situation I wouldn't attempt it on a live stream. So there is that. Right. So I think we'll organize our nodes. So we've got our arch boolean, which is kind of doing everything, all the heavy lifting at the moment. The sweep is not getting utilized at this stage, so that's fine. I'm going to quickly press Shift and S just to get a prettier network. The cylinders is kind of the base of everything. So what I'll probably be doing for these, so that's getting merged. I think those are going to go into their own subnetwork. And this subnetwork is going to be called segment 1, because we'll be making multiple. Potentially we would be adding more things to this, but anyway. Segment 1, and that's getting plopped into there. This transform is doing what? This transform is Boolean related. Alright. The match size is also Boolean related. So let's plop this one in that direction. This is Boolean scale. Alright. And this is specifically for the door. So this is the door. That goes. Let me just quickly grab these and bring them up, and we can see what we're working with. Right. I don't like that these are interconnecting, but we'll live with it. So the match size takes there, then this gets Boolean into that, then it gets transformed to rotate, which is Boolean rotation. And then that gets Boolean together with the windows. So this is door. We just quickly, I wonder if we can, do we want to do? Right, okay. So this I'm going to lift up completely, because this is going to get utilized all the networks, not just the first segment. Brilliant. Right, so that is quickly going to get a note, and that is, no, not that. That one, yep. And then that's going to be called door. And that Ooh, segment 1 door. This is segment 1 door. 1 door. Alright. Not an exclamation point for 1 1. Right, so, and then this is the window for set segment 1. So we're going to grab those. That's going to be also be plopped into a note. That goes there, and we could technically use subnotes for these, but anyway, so that's going to be Windows. Segment 1 Windows. Modeling is time consuming in Houdini, right? Faster in Maya and Blender. Significantly faster in both, but you do not have the flexibility. So the reason I'm using it this way is because I can create multiple iterations with the same network. For example, I can decide at this point, like, let's say this is done, right? Let's say this is the final product. And my art director comes to me and says, I didn't like the shape of the roof. Change the roof. I can say, okay, give me 2 seconds, I'll change the roof. You can then go up and go to your, where is my roof? Go into your roof, go into your attribute VOP, do that, got a different roof. Okay, it says, I actually want a different shaped window or a different number of windows. You can go into your, where is it? I believe it's this one, the copy and transform. You can go into here, and, well, no, this is not for number. Let's say we want a higher tower, right? You can, where are we? Have I added total numbers? No, what am I doing? I've broken my network. Let's see. Right, this is the windows. I can reduce the number of windows. Maybe I only wants 4. Brilliant, he's now only got 4 windows. I can change, obviously, the amount of segments, but for some reason I've broken that. I don't know why that's broken. That is translate height. That's fine. I suspect it's probably this. It's probably that got broken. Why is it broken though? Let me quickly check why that broke. That's probably going to be determined by segment 1, and it's going to be determined by that. So copy that parameter, and we can, most likely because I changed the placement of it. Let's see, channels, preference, brilliant, fixed. Right, so you can come to me and say, well, he actually wants a different amount of segments on the tower, and I can say, okay, 7, do you want 5, do you want 4, do you want whatever you want. And ideally, if I find this, we would have different segments that look differently. Maybe some have windows, maybe some don't. Maybe instead of a roof, basically instead of a roof, they have a fence thing. What do you call it? That thing. Railing. Maybe they have a railing instead. So that is the benefit of doing it in Houdini. You can very quickly generate different looks with the same network. Would it be quicker to model this as it is? For sure. Without a shadow of a doubt, it would be quicker. But the downside to it is, you don't have the flexibility. So if you need to quickly generate 20 towers, it would be much quicker to build one network that can do everything. And give you that 20. And in fact, you wouldn't be limited to the 20. You can get 100 if you need 100. So that is why I enjoy doing it in Houdini, because I can create one tower and I can manipulate it and use it multiple times in the same environment. So for most people, they probably would never learn Houdini, because it is easier to model it. Won't lie, it is easier. But if you want to build environments and you want a lot of variations of the same thing, it's just easier to do in Houdini. It's not easy, but it is easier because you don't spend all that time making that many towers by hand. So that is why I enjoy doing Houdini, enjoy doing environments in Houdini, is for that reason, because I can create this one and then get different results depending on what I want. So hopefully that answers your question. Alright, so. What else do I want to do to it? I do want to figure out how to randomize the segments. I do want to know how to do that. So I'm actually going to make a note about that and we can look at it on Friday because I'll be doing another stream on Friday. So that's going to be randomized segments. Why not? Alright. And then for the rest, also on Friday, what I'll probably be doing is adding window frames. We'll be adding window frames, we'll be adding door frames, we might even be adding doors, because why not? For fun. So I think in that case, that's going to be it for today, and I'll see you all next time.